All right, we are back for episode 56 of Digital Divination. And
Excellent.
Ron, finally, we're at the episode number that is equal to my age. I know you have been
I guess
dying to
we knew
know.
we I've been waiting for this.
Yes,
Well,
yes,
welcome. It's Digital Divination is now as old as us.
yes,
That's
yes. And soon it will be older because we're going to do more episodes
that's right. That's right.
before
That's right.
our next birthdays. So, I got contacted by somebody this week, and I thought it would give us a kind of a neat topic to discuss. So there's this fella, his name is GM McLeods. So that's what he goes by online, and he runs Loaded Dice Rollers. It's been a online actual play podcast for a couple years, and more recently he's gone on to YouTube, and he started something called RPG All Stars, where he
Okay.
brings in guests from Hollywood because he's kind of based in Hollywood. He's got a pub there or something, and GM's out of, and he brings in stars from uh, fantasy or sci-fi shows. Like he's had Elijah Wood on there and Sean Astin, which are I think are pretty big names
Hmm.
in the fantasy realm on his show, and a bunch of other lesser known people that maybe somebody's really dedicated knows. I have no idea who they are, but he's starting up a new Starfinder campaign. He wants some help from us.
It's always exciting to hear anybody starting up a new campaign, but somebody who's got that kind of visibility starting up a Starfinder
Yeah.
campaign is great for the hobby.
Yeah, he had posted on one of the Starfinder Facebook groups. He'd been asking if we were to run a new AP, which one would we do? He already ran Dead Sons, which I think
Oh,
is
that's what I was going to ask.
obvious one.
What his experience is. So Dead
Yeah.
Sons is I mean, it's the one that most people start with. We started with it, so
Yes. Yes. So he started with that, and I actually think Against the Aeon Throne, depending on what he's looking for, would be a next good one to do. But we can talk about that when we talk with him.
right. It's
See.
only half length, but it's
Right.
the author of the first volume of Against the Aeon Throne is both intelligent and humble. Um,
Yes. Yeah, you could give him that author might be able to give some pointers as to, oh yeah, this is where it's really cool. Make sure you focus on this and this other part
right.
here, not so much. Yeah, I played that a long time ago, so I actually don't remember very much other than there's like a prison somewhere and a couple other things throughout the whole series.
There is. Right. It's
Yeah.
actually not. I'm with the compilation of Dead Sons into a single hardcover.
Yeah.
Everybody's kind of looking at, all right, well, what's next? And I don't have any inside information as to what's next or anything like that. But I'm kind of sort of side lobbying for Against the Aeon Throne. I feel like it's a good
Yeah.
evergreen
Yes.
AP. It's not as heavy a lift,
Yeah.
and frankly, I'm excited about stories where you get to punch space Nazis.
Yep. Yep.
That's a timeless classic right there.
It is really a straightforward setup, compared to like Signal of Screams or the Fly Free or Die or any of those. I think Against the Throne's pretty straightforward. You go in there, you have a couple side jobs to level up and learn things. You
Hmm.
might have some skill things, a lot of little fighty things. But it's an easy way to kind of build up. And like you said, you have this ever present enemy that you're having to deal with, and it's not like the mysterious monster out in the woods. You kind of know when their movements and kind of what they're like, and so it's a little bit easier, I think, to wrap your head around as a new player.
Right. There's not a lot of subsystems to go into
Yes.
either. Things like the charter system for Horizons of the
Mhm.
Vast or the trade system for Fly Free or Die doesn't have some of the complexities of threefold conspiracy. Yeah, I agree with you. It's a good sort of straightforward starter type story.
Mhm. So anybody who's starting up, but I think if he's bringing in some, rookie guest stars that haven't, a lot of them don't have tabletop RPG experience, much less Starfinder, I think that
Hmm.
would be an easy one. So I think we're in agreement. Maybe that I'd like Donna Flame a lot. I thought that was a lot of fun. It's kind of a slow burn, so to
Ha
speak, in
ha
terms
ha ha ha.
of how it builds. And then there's that book 4 in there that just is really whacked out. It
Kind of
doesn't
weird
match up.
oddball.
Yeah, it doesn't really build on the story, it's just
Right.
this thing that's all by itself. It's like this huge sidetrack, and I don't. How did that get in there like that anyway? I don't know.
I don't know even who is responsible for that. But it's kind of funny because for the longest time in Pathfinder First Edition, we got kind of this
Yeah.
reputation that our stories would, in the fifth act, the fifth part of a six-part series, the fifth adventure would always go someplace just totally off the wall,
Right.
and
Right. I
maybe
remember you said that.
at the time we thought narratively, it's an interesting break. So you've got this War for the Crown, which is this deep political intrigue in one particular nation. And in the fifth book, you go to the Outer Planes you have to get somebody's soul from the Outer Planes. And so you've got a
Yeah.
whole Outer Planar adventure before you come back. I feel like there are a lot of good, strong narrative reasons to have that sort of book five break to kind of get back to the theme and have the main theme be even stronger. I
Hmm.
feel like a lot of people in our community took it as, well, Paizo they start to meander and don't know what they're doing by about book five. So, we
Yeah.
know what we're doing from the very beginning.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
part of
Yeah.
planning these out. But in Dawn of Flame, I think you're onto something. Book four is that. Book four is let's deviate from sort of what we've known before. And then when you get back to it and you're much deeper in the sun and you're making the
Hmm.
big moves that are very, very deep in the sun, you've got you're back to the main through line in a
Hmm.
much sort of feel like you're the bigger, higher level heroes kind of way.
Right.
So
Right. Right. Yeah. You do pick up some kind of cool loot, and at the point level up and get some cool skills, and so maybe it's kind of a training ground, to prepare the heroes for what comes next.
for bigger things, yeah, maybe
Yes.
so.
So the other one I thought is, and I'm kind of biased about this, is Devastation Arc. If you
Mhm.
really want to showcase something and get into cool stuff, I think high level, right? Coming in at high level when everybody has cool things to do for a new player, I think that could be really overwhelming.
Super intimidating, I think, to try to
Yeah.
keep track of everything that you've got. I feel like
I have a
starting
hard
at
time,
lower level.
Yeah.
Yeah, right. Well, we've seen that. Well, and
Yeah.
that's part of the genuine premise of Intrepid Heroes, right? Is
Mm.
we're real gamers playing the real game, and sometimes we forget stuff or we
Yeah.
screw up or whatever. That's just fine. That
Mhm.
happens at everybody's tables, including ours. We're not trying to edit and re-edit till we get it perfect or anything. We're just, all right, well, I forgot this thing, and
Yes.
even in retrospect, like, oh man, if only I'd remembered X, this whole thing would have gone
Yes.
easier. I got
But when
real
you do
gamers.
remember X, like last night, I remembered X, and that was awesome.
It
The
was fantastic.
it's
Yeah,
like,
it was.
wow, this is really, I mitigated 300 points plus a damage for the whole party.
Yep,
That's
yep.
that's good. That's good. So, but I thought that would be cool, but it's just kind of too tough. I mean, we'll talk to him and see.
Mhm.
But one of the things that he had mentioned, and this was kind of in his initial request, is can somebody help give him a refresher on the types of things that players often mess up when they're running a Starfinder, things, little rules that maybe they misinterpret or maybe they try to take advantage of. And I said,
Mhm.
yeah, sure. I got some experience. I'd be happy to chat with you. And so he contacted me back and said, oh, yeah, I'd love to do this. And they're actually going to record it for part of their show. So I think that's great. We'll get some
Oh,
exposure.
neat. Okay.
But I told him I had to have my good friend Ron here because he's the one
Oh,
that actually knows everything. And I always forget. And I just ask Ron. And
forget. I
so
feel like I don't know anything.
I think between the two of us, we'll figure stuff out. I was like, oh man, this is a lot of pressure. If I got to go on there, explain everything myself, without having a script and writing stuff down and notes, it's like that's like too much work. But if we could just like pretend it's like you and I talking about it and riffing back and forth, I think we'll cover everything and it'll be fun.
Will build up a lot of things. Yeah, I feel like that's actually kind of a loaded question though. It's like what rules do players forget? Well, it depends a lot on where the players are coming from.
Yeah.
I feel like players who are coming from Pathfinder First Edition into Starfinder
Hmm.
need the least amount of hand holding
Right.
because things are very, very similar.
Hmm.
They've got to be taught the difference between hit points and stamina and how you use resolve points.
Right.
But that's really a teaching thing. That's not a thing you might forget.
Hmm.
People going from other games into Starfinder have other things. Let me give you an example. Anybody coming from a D20 game already knows that once you roll for initiative for a combat, you go around in that order, and in subsequent rounds, you just keep going around in that order. But
Right.
not all games work that way. If you've just
Yes.
come into if you're new to tabletop gaming, maybe played something that's a little more free form or roll every round in the initiative, even earlier editions of Dungeons and Dragons, you might have to remember, oh, that's right. Okay, no, nobody, no, don't roll initiative again. We've already got it set for this combat.
Or something like Torg, where you can just kind of choose when you want to jump in,
Right,
depending on.
right.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
don't. I think that's probably. I'm sure he has a handle on that because he's running Pathfinder, D&D, and Starfinder.
Okay, good, good, good. If that's the world
It's
he's coming from, we can tailor things a
yeah,
little more specifically.
and so I think he'll know with his players. I'm just thinking, what are some things that are a little idiosyncratic to Starfinder that might differ? And you mentioned stamina and resolve points. So
Hmm.
explaining those, I think stamina is easy. It's like it's the hit points you take off first, and you can recover them more quickly. You know,
Right. Well, but the trick in that is that things that heal you will either heal hit points or stamina, and you've
right,
got to pay attention to which is
right,
which.
right. I think that's key. And like, so mystics are great. Like a cleric is great in D&D. But a mystic healing, well, in Starfinder, oftentimes you don't get down to those hit points. It's the
Hmm.
stamina that
Yep.
goes down, and well, then you can recover it with a 10-minute rest typically, or if you have an envoy that can offer that up. And there's a couple other, kind of more unique abilities, but the basic one is wait your 10 minutes and you
Is
get it
hit points.
back.
And then
Uh,
there's also things like poisons, which do
yes,
damage to hit points and bypass stamina entirely. That
right,
is a thing to keep in mind.
right. Poison and radiation effects, I
Hmm.
think. The fact that they go right to hit points, and then the saves and kind of the reoccurring nature of so radiation poisoning or regular poisoning you get,
The actual
you know,
disease that you get from
or if it's
radiation sickness. Yeah.
right, so those are additional things on top of the damage that then you have to be concerned about as well.
Hmm.
Depending on what level they start off with, they're probably not going to run into that until like fourth or fifth level, but it would be definitely
Hmm.
something to run in there. I think the action economy is something that is a little screwy with Starfinder compared to coming from if they're coming from D&D, and then
Hmm.
way different than second
Second edition.
edition,
Yeah. Oh,
which I
yeah.
think he's been running more recently. In fact, he one of the things he asked is, what are some of the home rules? All those home rules, when you set
House
um,
rules.
house
Yeah.
rules that you would set, and one of them I would set would be I'd make a 3 action economy for Starfinder. I think that would,
Okay.
you can have, if it's a full round action, it takes all three. If it's a move action, it's one. Standard action is one. Then you have a swift that could be third.
Hmm. Right.
Just especially if he's got players coming from second edition, that might actually be easy to do that. But if he wants to stick straight, then understanding that um, the difference between a move and a move action, I think, is pretty important to distinguish. In part because drawing weapons, either melee weapons or ranged weapons, you can do that as part of your normal move, or it costs you a move action. You can't do it as part
If
of
you're
a
just
move action.
standing there, right? Right.
Yes, and which is, I think, a lot of players might abuse that, or we just make the assumption, well, you're in a dangerous area, you just have your weapon out. But if you don't, then that's an issue.
Well, right. And
Um,
specifically, it's that you get a draw in conjunction with moving. One thing I've
right,
seen is people say, "Oh, I'm going to stand up. That's a move action. As part of standing
right,
up, I'm going to draw my weapon." No, you
right,
don't get to draw your weapon as part of any move action. You just get
right,
to draw it as part of a move.
right.
And then as soon as you've committed to doing a move, all the full actions that you might want to do, you can then no longer do. You can't make a trick
Yes.
attack. You can't make a
Hmm.
full attack. That's all those get sort of shut off to you as soon as you decide I'm going to take a move, even an efficient move where you're both moving and then drawing a weapon.
Right, right.
Now, if I guess I have to look this up. I suppose. Can you always draw a weapon when you move in Starfinder, or do you have to have a
Yeah.
base attack bonus of +1? That was the rule in.
Yes. Yes.
So not all first level characters can do
Right,
that.
right.
Okay.
But by second level, usually not an issue,
Right,
right?
everybody can.
But yeah, starting out, so that's a big one. And again, a lot of times we just say, hey, you have weapons out, not a big deal.
Mhm.
I don't think other issues related to movement. You know, I think like tumbling is pretty straightforward. You can move through friendly squares. You can't move through enemy squares without making a tumble check
an
to go
acrobatics
through.
check in order
Yeah,
to tumble. I
yeah.
think that the one of the things that is standard in Starfinder, which is not standard in other games, is diagonal movement 5-10-5-10.
Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah.
Getting people to count that out. People have a
Mhm,
tendency to go, and this is probably not harmful, but one thing I've seen a lot is people will go, okay, well, I'm gonna move diagonally here. I go 5-10, and then they count everything fives thereafter. All right, well,
yeah.
maybe you end up eking out another square or two. That's not really harmful. But the
Mhm.
rule is that it's 5, then 10, then 5, then 10,
Right.
even if you make some horizontal or vertical movement in between. So,
Oh,
you can
really?
go,
So if you go a whole bunch of I didn't know that.
yeah, if you go 5 and then 10,
Yeah,
and then you turn, so you're going straight up. I'm going to go, you go, okay. Oh, let me put it this way. If you go 5-10-5, and then you're like, okay, and then I'm going to turn, I'm going to go straight up through these squares,
yeah,
all right, 5-5-5-5-5. Oh, and then I'm going to cut this last little diagonal.
yeah.
Well, that last little diagonal costs 10 feet of movement
Oh, yeah,
because you've
yeah.
already done 5-10-5-10.
Got it, got it. Okay, I thought you meant even if you're going in a straight line, each of those is 5, 10, 5,
No,
10.
no, no, no.
Okay,
But you just
yeah,
have to,
yeah.
sometimes it means you have to remember if you're moving a
Right,
long ways. Well, how long was my last diagonal? And
right,
that's a little bit tricky
right.
sometimes to remember.
Right, right, and, he's doing it online. I looks kinda like Roll20, but I'm not sure what he's using for it. So, I mean, a lot of times it has automatic measurement well, so
It'll figure that out for you. Yeah.
yeah, so hopefully it's not an issue. Trying to think what other main things. Hmm.
Well, there's
Uh,
skill use. This is something that Pathfinder Second
mm,
Edition carried,
yeah,
and this is worth remembering. The way that skill use works is when you use a skill, you use it to do a thing, right?
right.
You're not just making an acrobatics check. Functionally, you're just making an acrobatics check, but you're making an acrobatics check to tumble. You're
Mhm,
making an
mhm,
engineering check to disable a device. And
right,
sometimes those have specific rules in there, right? There are some
right.
types of engineering checks you can make that require a specific kit that you must
Mhm.
have in
Right,
your
right, right,
inventory, or you can't do them at all, or you do them with a penalty. And some things you can do even if you don't have that kit.
right.
So the fact that skill use can sometimes get a little complicated. One of the things I like to
Mhm,
use to describe it to people is that don't think of it as you've got these skills. What can these skills do? It's that you've got a whole bunch of sort of abilities you can take, right? You can
mhm,
disable this device. You can tumble through. How do you disable this device? Well, you make an engineering check. That
mhm,
also
mhm,
helps people with the type of action they want to take that multiple skills cover, like recalling knowledge. I want to know about this creature. Oh,
mhm,
yeah, certainly. You know how a check to know about a creature goes, but a different skill is going to be used depending on what type of creature it is.
mhm, mhm.
That's something that sometimes people need to be talked through
Right,
sometimes a little bit
right,
more. They're too used to in fifth edition. It's be like, well, anytime I want to talk to anybody, I'm going to throw my charisma dice and that's going to be
right,
good. Well, I mean, it's a
right.
little more nuanced than that.
Mhm. Well, and I think the point you made about, kits, right, is, something that a lot of players early on don't they don't know. Like, if you're gonna hack
Hmm.
a computer, getting a hacker's kit. If you're gonna disable a trap, get a trapsmith tools, things like that. Because you're right, for hacking, you actually need a kit. You can't just do it without a kit.
Hmm.
Other things you get a minus if you don't have it. And so
Right.
that's pretty nuanced. And the kits themselves, they're like 100 to 400 credits each. Not super expensive. So somebody who does a lot of those things, probably not first level, you probably buy one kit at most, but after second or third level, you just buy all the kit. Not a
Right.
huge deal. I
Well,
was
then
gonna say with
here's maybe house rule territory.
yeah.
Have you ever been in a game where a GM require if the skill requires a kit that you
Mhm.
spend the action to draw the kit in order to use it to make a
Right,
check? I
right,
don't know that anybody does that. I think okay, you've got it. It's on your character sheet. Okay, I'm not ever going to make you pull it out. You just have to have it.
right, right. Well, and the other thing about interacting with things, using your skills, some things it'll say, well, this takes a full round action to turn off whatever the thing, or this is a standard action every time you try it. Um, in general, though, I think if it doesn't list anything, I think it's in general a standard action to do it, right?
That's
To
the default
use,
rule. Yeah, right.
right? That's the default, but sometimes it's longer. So you need to be mindful of that. But you're right. We never actually have the drawing part. You're taking it out. So maybe it's all ready at hand. don't know. The other thing I was gonna mention with skills is the different types of bonuses and making sure you're not trying to stack two bonuses of the same type. I think that's one of the big issues I ran into when I was making characters, in particular with the operative and with the envoy, because they have special bonuses that are insight bonuses that
Hmm.
won't then stack with other insight bonuses they might get.
Oh, I feel like that's a much bigger issue than skills. Skills is a good way
Yeah.
to think about it. That's where it starts to come into play. But yeah, it's a much bigger rules issue than somebody is going to cast, a spell that does a thing plus a class ability that does a thing plus
Right.
equipment. I mean, there's a lot of ways that you get these types of bonuses and how they interact. It's important
Mhm.
to keep the bonus type. Bonus types is an important limiting mechanic in the game.
Right. 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 And especially, reason why I notice it so much with the operative and the operative, it's their operative's edge, which, starts off relatively small, but can get to be +3, +4, +5, +6 on top of all their skill rolls, right? That's a pretty big bonus, right?
Mhm.
The operative's edge. And then with the envoy, they get their expertise die, which could, starts off like at what, 1D 1d4, it goes
Right.
1d6,
1d6, I
1d6
think.
plus
Yeah.
1 plus 2 goes to 1d8 plus 1, so on and so forth. Well, again, that's another insight bonus. So if you have something else that gives you a +2 insight bonus, they're not additive. That's the mistake I was making at leveling up characters. I not understanding,
Okay.
not actually looking at. And that's what players need to look at is what is the bonus type that you're applying. Make sure that you're not doubling up.
Yeah, that's not a surprise. You get a little more excited about what the bonus is. I'm
Yeah,
more excited about the +2 than the circumstance or insight or whatever that
right.
follows the +2. I'm excited about +2.
Mhm. Another thing that I think if you're playing Pathfinder and going to Starfinder, things that provoke attacks of opportunity, I think that's one that gets a little mixed up a little bit because in Starfinder, there's only three things that provoke, and one of them is not standing up in a square, which that's the one that always throws people off.
Oh, that's
So
a good point.
yeah, so it's moving, but out of a threatened square, uh,
Hmm.
casting within Oh, I would casting within
Within a
threatened
threatened area.
square,
Yep.
threatened area, and then, doing a ranged attack from within a threatened area, unless you have something that tells you that doesn't provoke, the spell type, or you have a special ability like an operative, those things will provoke attacks of opportunity, unless the creature doesn't have an attack of opportunity left, or
Right.
the creature hasn't acted yet in that round. You can't take
Well, and that
reactions until you've acted. I think that's different too as well, right?
no, that's the same in Pathfinder First Edition. That was the big deal
Mhm.
because if you have one of the things that combat reflexes feat lets
Right,
you do
right.
is be able to make attacks of opportunity before you actually get to go in combat. And I
Mhm,
remember that because
mhm.
one of the casual phrases around the table, even at a lot of conventions, not just my own tables, that I would hear is if people got sort of jumped by a monster, combat begins and you're within a creature's reach, but the creature hasn't gone yet. They'll say, "All right, well, for my action, I'm going to test it for attacks or for combat reflexes by just
Yeah,
backing away. Does it
yeah.
attack me when it does that?" Right?
Oh, I like
Um,
that. Yeah, yeah. Well, that in Starfinder, like, seems like everything has can do attacks of opportunity. In 2nd edition, it's kinda limited to more features that are more martial in the type of attacks they do is I don't know if that's the
that's
right word.
exactly right. Yeah,
Yeah,
fighters get attack of opportunity, sort of as a big giants. A lot of giants do
yeah.
anything that is sort of a big weapon wielding type
Right,
as is
right.
likely to have attacks of opportunity. If other than that, the creatures that have attacks of opportunity are ones that are intended to kind of be sneaky or surprise you, right?
Right,
If you
right.
attack some giant bird and the bird has attacks of opportunity with its beak or something, then it's
Mhm.
expected to be sort of one of those cinematic scenes where you try to roll away, but oh, at the last second it tries to peck down at you, and
You just
but
remind you
it's a default thing. So
yeah, you said sneak, and it reminded me of another difference between 2nd edition in Starfinder in, how flanking and flat-footed work, right?
oh yes,
Yeah, because in, 2nd edition, if you're flanked, you're flat-footed, right? Is that correct?
correct.
Okay,
You're flat-footed to the creatures that are flanking you. Yeah.
right. In Starfinder, you can be flat-footed and flanked, and those actually both can happen at the same time.
Right. And
Uh,
it can be as much as a 4-point swing in whether or not you're
right,
going to hit somebody. That's a pretty
right,
big deal. It's pretty effective
right. Where
to
in
stack
that
those up.
case, yeah, flanking gives you +2 to your attack. The flat-footedness does a -2 to the target's AC. So they don't stack per se, but you're right. It's a 4-point AC swing, which I was really surprised to see didn't happen in second edition. So that's another thing to
Right.
for
Well, and
folks
if
to
and the reason that it's not the case in second edition is because the math is a lot tighter.
right.
4 points is a way bigger deal than 2 points is,
Yes.
and so limiting it to only a 2 point advantage is still pretty good.
Oh yeah, that's the thing that kind of drives me a little nuts about second edition is like I'm not like getting new armor and nothing's getting buffed up. I'm just every time I level, I get this. Okay, I get a little bit, one more point of AC. It's like
Hmm.
there's no big changes. Like in Starfinder, it's like you level up. Oh, now you can get this bigger, better gear that could have all kinds of additional things to you. So it seems like it's a bit more costly in Starfinder to get this better AC, but you also see a bigger change,
Right.
in a
Right.
shorter time period, and
Well,
it's the
now
math, right?
that makes second edition a little more like fifth edition in that regard. Way
Yeah.
way back in the first part of fifth edition, my brother ran the early fifth edition adventures, the Queen of the Dragon Horde or whatever. Anyway,
Mhm.
the and one of the things he was kind of free forming a lot of the campaign he was running based on those adventures. We would go off script quite a lot, and he was remarking that one of the biggest mistakes he made was to give the fighter magic weapons and or magic armor and a magic shield, right? Because you scale the armor class up too high, so high that the
Oh.
fighter just becomes unhittable.
Mm.
And I
Mhm.
think that second edition knows that that's a real risk, and so
Right.
tries to keep it the tries to keep the armor class bonuses that are available for you lower
Mhm.
throughout the whole life of the game. Starfinder, which is building on the Pathfinder first edition model, isn't
Right.
doing that. Their armor class bonuses are a lot easier to find in Starfinder.
Right. And the other thing kinda related to that, in second edition, there's no level limit to, like, armor. It's just you just have to meet the strength requirement, right? To
That's
put it
correct.
on?
That's correct.
But in Starfinder, the strength requirement, if it's, like heavy armor, then there's an issue with that.
Hmm.
Otherwise, it's a level requirement for, the thing that prevents you from putting on level 20 gear isn't the fact that it's super heavy, it's the fact that you're not close enough to that level, I guess. Or no, you could
Oh
do that
wait,
if you
this
had access.
I don't
You
know.
can't
This
buy
is
it. Yeah,
right. You can't get it, but
yeah,
if you've happened to find it somewhere,
yeah, then you could use
if
it.
your
Yeah,
GM wanted to make it the reward, I suppose you could.
yeah. Oh, yeah, that's wild then. That
That
doesn't
is.
happen, I guess, usually.
Right. Oh, one thing that I think that Pathfinder second edition players will get, but Pathfinder first edition players won't when they move into Starfinder, is that a 5 foot step is a move action
Yes.
because
Oh, yeah, yeah,
it's
yeah.
free in Pathfinder first edition. You can do it in
Yes.
addition to a bunch of other stuff. And the first time somebody takes a 5 foot step either into or out of danger and is told, wait, that's your whole move action right there.
Yes.
There's always kind of a shock to
And
people
then
who
what
are
it's
learning.
called, right? So it's a 5-foot step, it's a step, or it's a guarded step, depending on which of those 3 systems you're in.
That's
The main thing
exactly
is
right.
none of them provoke attacks of opportunity, and 2 of them count as an action, but only one of them counts as a move action, right? Because in second edition, it is just one of your 3 actions.
That's correct.
So,
Yep.
it's yeah, boy, that
Uh,
could yeah, keeping that straight. And I have no idea what 5th edition does with that. Do they have attacks of opportunity in 5th edition?
They do. This is opportunity attacks, I think they're called. And
Okay.
that might be my fourth edition showing. I'm in an online fourth edition game that I play. But the way that fifth edition does it is not. It doesn't strike me as particularly intuitive. It's
Mhm.
got a disengage action,
Oh,
and
wow.
once you take the disengage action, which I believe is a standard action, all that does is protect your movement. So
Mm,
if you want to back away, you say I disengage, and then I move away, and that movement isn't going to take opportunity attacks because I've already disengaged. Now that is basically withdrawing,
yeah.
from combat, but it does make things interesting because you can have types of characters, rogues and monks, who get to disengage as a bonus action.
Oh.
So, oh,
Yeah.
I make my attack, and then, haha, and now I'm going to dance away, and you're not going to be able to respond back.
Mhm.
The reason that becomes confusing to players, Pathfinder players going over to fifth edition that I've seen, is that, or even new fifth edition players, is they say, okay, I'm going to disengage. All right, well, disengaging, how far do I move when I disengage? And the answer is you don't move at all. All you're doing is readying yourself to move in a safe way. That's what
Mm.
disengaging is.
Okay.
Um,
Okay.
so it handles that differently. They've still got the same types of attacks. You're still thinking about how to get away from them. But the other thing about fifth edition is you can move around pretty freely within somebody's threatened area. It's only when you leave it that you
Mhm.
actually take the attack of opportunity.
Mhm.
As I heard it put really early on, fifth edition only punishes cowardice, right? If you're if you're just running around to the other side of the monster, great, no problem, you're free to do
Yeah.
that. If you're actually
Yeah.
going to run away from the monster, then there's trouble.
Wow. Wow.
Um, there's also how you can cast spells with the attack of opportunity. Starfinder feels very punitive in that regard,
Mhm.
in that if you get hit at all, there's
Right.
no concentration check, there's no ability to recover. You just, once you
Right.
get hit, your spell is done with. When you
Mhm.
provoke and you take the attack, it's a much higher risk to cast a spell
Right.
when you're in somebody's threatened area.
Right. Right. Yeah, that's one of the because in second edition, you don't necessarily get an attack of opportunity, and if you do get hit, what happens?
If you do get hit, generally nothing happens unless you are critically hit. And then
Okay.
the action that you were taking gets disrupted.
Right.
So if you're trying to move, you don't move. You're trying to manipulate something to cast a spell, then you don't do that. Higher
Mhm.
level creatures will sometimes have an ability that's, oh, so and so gets an attack of opportunity, and they disrupt on any hit, not just a
Right.
critical hit.
Got it. Got it. Critical hits you mentioned, they're probably the same if you're coming from first edition or fifth edition, right? On a 20, I don't. Can you get a
Right.
critical on less than a 20 in fifth edition?
I think with the right feats, keen. I think they have the
Right.
equivalent of keen weapons and things like that.
Okay,
I
they
think they've
do.
got ways to
Okay.
make it a
Yeah.
little
Yeah.
lower. I'm not sure.
Yeah. But second edition, if you're coming from it, that's like a completely different animal then. So
Right. Well, and it's also a little bit sad to play a lot of second edition
yes.
and then go
Yes.
into Starfinder and go, "Oh, I hit him by like
Yes.
15,
Yes.
but I don't crit him, right? I just hit him really kind of well, I guess. It's all, good job, that's
But
all you get for it."
in Starfinder, that doesn't happen a lot. Especially like when we're playing a high level, it's like
Hmm.
I almost never am 10 over what I need to hit, you know?
I guess that's true. More,
Yeah.
but I'm seeing it because I'm quite frequently, as the monsters are getting
Yes.
more than 10 over what I
Yes.
need to hit you
Yes.
guys.
So I don't
So
like to get crit as much.
maybe it's for the best it doesn't have that rule in Starfinder.
Right. Right. I was thinking something else that just came to mind in terms of character building that it
Hmm.
actually could be confusing for some folks. How you build your stamina pool and how you build your hit point pool for doing it, right?
Oh, because one comes from the class and the
Class,
other comes from the race.
right. And so your hit points are you get your class bonus, and first level you get a race score,
Hmm.
and then every subsequent level you get your class score to it.
Hmm.
For stamina, you get your class score plus your constitution modifier, and that's how
Oh,
you
yeah,
go.
right.
Yeah,
That's how
so
the Constitution modifier plays in.
right. Which can be confusing because if you're talking just regular hit points, it's like, oh, this is what I get from my class plus my constitution modifier. And do all the games just give a flat amount? You're not rolling anymore for hit
I don't
points?
think anybody rolls anymore. I feel like that's
Yeah.
kind of punitive. If you roll
Yeah.
if you roll one of some level, it has ripple effects that make you sort of frail throughout your entire adventuring career, and there's
Yes.
just kind of less fun.
Well, yeah. When I played second edition back in the day, that's what we did, and that was really sad.
Yeah.
So,
Yep. We had another thing that I was thinking is how you help your friends do stuff, how you
oh
aid.
yeah, yes,
Because one of the things that I see so commonly done wrong that I almost kind of wonder if it shouldn't be the rule is that when people are aiding, it's like, oh, you three people, you're going to help. All right, well, let's all roll, and whoever gets the highest gets a bonus based on the number of people that succeed. That's not the rule.
no,
You're supposed
all
to
right,
pick a main character
right,
ahead before anybody touches their dice. Who's going
yes,
to be leading and who's going to be helping? But
right,
I think people push towards the other way that I described, because it makes everybody feel like they could be kind of the hero, right? If
Right.
we're all going to roll, whoever gets the best, and then get a bonus based on whoever's got the best, that really could. Well, any of us, could do it. If I'm just helping and I got a +9, I don't.
Right.
Why am I even picking up my dice? Okay, you get your +2 from me.
Right. And that's in Starfinder, and if you're
Hmm.
coming from, second edition, in Starfinder, you only need a 10 to assist rather than what much higher score, right? In
Oh
second
yeah,
edition?
20 sometime, 20
Yeah.
usually, and then there's a risk of giving a penalty, and that
Right.
the bonuses don't stack, and yeah,
Hmm.
second edition helping is aiding is very different.
Right. And we don't have that. We don't have that in Starfinder. There's no penalty if you fail to aid.
Right.
Speaking of failures, automatic failures, if you roll a 1, it's only an automatic failure for what? For
Attack rolls
saving
and saving
throws
throws.
and attack rolls.
Right.
For skill checks, it's not, and I think that's something. Is that the case in other systems? I'm not sure.
I don't know.
You
I mean,
roll
it's the case in well, second edition does it a little bit differently. What a one
yes,
does is it increases your failure by one step.
right.
So even if you were so good that you would succeed at something, an attack or a skill, anything, a saving throw, if
Mhm.
you rolled a 1, if that would result in a success, you knock it down by one step to be okay. It takes your success to a failure. Almost
Right,
always, it takes a failure to a critical failure. But the
right.
rule is that you still figure out what your result is and then knock it down by one step. It's the same.
Mhm.
It's the opposite of a 20. So
So, I'm trying to think other things. Like in second edition, I noticed there's a lot more, secret GM roles for things, seems like,
mhm.
or if you're stealthing, uh, contested roles, so stealth
Yeah,
versus a
there's no
perception.
contested roles in second edition. You're doing a DC based on somebody else's
Right,
thing.
right.
That's and one of the things I really like about fifth edition is they use that for the passive scores, passive
Mhm.
perception and passive insight. I'm not going to make my people roll a perception, then they'll know something's up. I'll just say this requires a passive perception of 14 to notice, and I've already
Mhm.
know who's got what scores in passive perception, so I can
Mm.
just say, "Oh,
Right.
keen-eyed elven ranger, you happen to
Mhm.
spot, the edge of the secret door or whatever."
Right,
Um,
right.
we've got how much time do we have in this interview? We got a lot of stuff.
I don't
I'm making a
know.
little
I'm not
I'm making a
sure.
little list here.
Oh,
Tell me if
good,
this
good.
list seems like it works out. Okay.
Okay.
So, hit points and stamina points,
Yeah,
and maybe the later point about character build is
yeah,
something to pay attention there. The action economy, that it's
yeah.
the standard and the move and then we branched off of that to move actions specifically, how you
Right,
combine them with drawing weapons, how you do diagonals. We talked about skills and skill uses a little bit, and then
right,
equipment that you need to have in order to
right,
use some of those skill activities,
mhm,
uh, which led us to talking about types of bonuses
right.
that you
Skill
have,
bonus.
making sure that they don't stack together. um, we talked about, and then kind of a grab bag. We talked about attacks of opportunity. That there are only three things that cause those, and to keep those
Right,
in mind.
mhm,
That 5 foot steps aren't free;
right,
they're a move action. Maybe
right.
that ought to be part of the movie. I'll draw an arrow there. That ought that ought to be everything I need for
Yeah,
the interview that we're doing later. Um, aiding mechanics and how you help each
right,
other, and then what happens on a natural one. The only things that you fail on a natural one
mhm,
is a little more limited.
right.
Um, so I feel like that's a kind of a lot of stuff, but I think that's a very helpful list. Is there anything
Yeah,
we should
and
add to this?
well, he's gonna have questions. I was just thinking we should talk topics of things just to make sure we had
We
something to
it,
say.
does he not realize that we just start talking and we don't stop? That's how we do it.
Well, I don't know. I don't know that he's ever seen or heard any of our shows. I mean, I'm not gonna propose that.
Ugh.
But, as soon as I mentioned that I had this, Paizo, I forget if it's managing developer or developer management. What's your title
Development
again?
manager.
Development manager, that was, I could bring along. He said, "Oh, that would be brilliant."
Oh,
So,
sweet.
yeah, so I think he's counting on you to
And then he
be able to
learned which
answer.
development manager it was, and he reconsidered.
That's the only one we got left. Everybody else was out to lunch. So, yeah. All right. Well, I think we'll be ready. We're recording
Okay.
this later today, so you be ready for that,
Right.
and we'll give it a go. All right.
Alrighty.
I'm John.
And I'm Ron, and this is Digital Divination.